Hi, Andrea Waddell here. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I created this painting. This is a 16 by 20 canvas, and I've used oil and cold wax throughout. I haven't done a lot of layering in this one, which is kind of what I usually do with oil and cold wax. Mostly I've used it as an impasto technique, so I'm just using it to create texture. And it works wonderfully well for that. And the advantage of this over acrylic, even though I do like acrylic, is that it's not set so quickly, so that it's not set in stone, that texture. You can still move it around and play with it the next day and even the day after. And it allowed me to correct color using opaque layers and composition all the way through. So I hope you get something from watching this video. And if you have any questions, of course, put those in the comments below. And all of the colors and the materials, also you'll find that in the notes below. I have an online class coming up. I don't run these very often. The next class is going to start on October 7th. It's going to run for 4 consecutive weeks, 9 to 11 Pacific. It's limited to a small group of artists. So if you wanted to take a class from me and you're ready to do it, you might want to jump on this one. All the information is in the notes below. And if you haven't already subscribed to my newsletter to stay in the loop of this kind of thing, go ahead and do that. Okay, let's get to it. This is the first layer of the painting, and I'm using the palette that I had for a previous video I did that you can check out, which is Color and Composition on Oil and Cold Wax. And I'm using that same palette, and I've got a vase of bouquet of flowers, and I am loosely interpreting what I am seeing. The flowers are underneath me there, and I'm just taking shapes and lines and ideas, really, from what I'm looking at, and I'm spending more time painting than I am looking at those flowers. So I'm using oil and cold wax on canvas and using it as an impasto technique, which means I can give texture and I can shape things, and you can see the brush strokes, and you can kind of scrape in lightly to the canvas. And I think it's a technique that I like. I enjoy it a lot. So that's layer 1. So here's my setup. It's nice to have everything spread out and ready to go. I've got a huge thing of cold wax. I've got my oil paints, and then I wind up moving them to the side so that I can actually work, and a pretty big palette. That's my CAD orange, and I'm mixing 50-50 cold wax to oil paint. And I've got a nice piece of Arches oil paper there, and I found that it's really nice to be able to just clean your palette knife off on a piece of paper, and I wind up using that piece of paper down the line for some collage. So it's a nice little thing that I've started doing. I'll talk to you in a second about all those colors and what that base color is to the right there that you can see. It's the alizarin. I've got some beautiful permanent green. I have a huge mix of colors here. I've got radiant turquoise, I've got transparent oranges, fanchon red, lots of different greens, a dioxide purple, a phthalo green. And what I did is I took a little bit of all of these colors, a tiny bit, with some light Portland gray, and I made this base color, so it has a little bit of all of those different colors in it. So hopefully everything's going to harmonize. We shall see. Here we go. And again, like the last painting, I am working in oil and cold wax, so everything here is mixed with some cold wax medium, kind of half and half. And this is done on canvas, so on canvas I'm not going to be doing any really aggressive scraping back. It's mostly layering up, almost entirely layering up. Excuse me. And since I like to work with brushes even when I'm working on canvas and oil and cold wax, I've got my Galkide here. So I'm going to start by laying down this base color. It's a little bit different than the one that I already have. It's not quite as warm and it's not quite as green. It's just a little more neutral, which is what I'm after. Yeah, I need some Galkide. Yay. The Galkide just makes the paint more fluid, because I have these kind of old canvases I want to use, and so I'm just using them with cold wax. I always start doing this yoga breathing when I'm painting. I don't know why. I think it's because it takes so much concentration. And it actually takes quite a bit of concentration to film oneself in one's process. I can tell you, it is a labor of love, my friends. I didn't fix that line on purpose this time, and I kind of like the effect that it has. Just there's sort of almost like a shadow of a line there that I'll play with. There we go. And again, this first painting was done looking at a bouquet of flowers I had. So it was just like rough, approximate kind of gestures that I was throwing at it. And I'm probably not gonna, today's a new day. I'm not gonna, there's a lot of this that's gonna get changed. I've thought it through before I started painting for a video. So it's gonna change. I'll keep the kind of the core, the basic, the idea of it, but it's gonna change a lot and be more reflective of kind of my palette and my ideas today. So I'm working on two paintings here. At least I'm starting these first layers side by side because I have the intention of creating a sister painting for the one on the right, using the same palette and making sure I can flex my skills. And if I wind up creating something that I really like in the one that I've got that's more advanced and more advanced stages on the right, I want to make sure that I can repeat that. Especially when working to a show or when you're working on creating a series of paintings, which is always important to do as you advance as an artist. It's actually really pretty tricky, trickier than one thinks, to repeat oneself and understand what you're doing. So I've got some Citrusolve there to wash brushes in, and I'm going to pull in some Galkide. I kind of dip my brush in my Galkide just to get some fluidity. And I'm going to start editing this first layer, bringing in some leaves, and I'm hoping that layering in some green over that purple will be somewhat of a nice use of a complement underpainting, and then bringing in a semi-complement above it. And again, I have sketched this out for myself, so I am looking at a sketch for both of these paintings that are in process. First of all, it's easier for me to do it that way, to kind of know where I'm going before I film, especially, than to just be completely spontaneous. And I've found that I really enjoy working that way now, of giving myself some sense of direction before I go in, that there's parts of improvisation and parts where I've really thought about it. So again, I'm with that pink bit up there, I am using its complement. I'm layering the complement right on top of it and having some of that pink poke through, which will just give the color more depth. Finding some shapes. Having a nice warm brown there. And all of these colors work with that background because they have a little bit of that background color inside each of the colors. So you can see everything I'm laying down is pretty harmonious. That's that great dioxide purple. And these darker values just pop right off the canvas and look really strong against that backdrop. This was a little mistake that I was about to make right here. It took me a long time to figure out how to correct it. Right now, it looks like my leaf has a big bump on it. I really don't hesitate to bring in a ruler to get a straight line. And in this case, the line, it's not very straight because of the brush. So I wind up finding out that actually, if you just do a quick gesture, you can get that sharp edge that you're after. I always have radiant white. It's one of my biggest staples. And I've just mixed that in with the dioxide purple. And again, it's got some of that background color in it. And because this is also wet on wet, that background color is just getting mixed into the paint. Every paint layer that I put down is getting a little bit mixed up with that background color, which eventually will harmonize, keep everything in harmony. That was a hard call to get rid of that lovely little yellow sunflower, but it just wasn't working with the composition. And you'll see what I mean as I go along. That is something that's so important to be able to do is, we have a tendency to fall in love with something on a canvas and then you try to, tense up around it and you want to make it work. And what I've found is as soon as I start tensing up and getting stuck somewhere in my process, inevitably it has to do with something that I'm trying to hold on to. So that's part of risk taking, is risking getting rid of something that you actually like, in the hopes that something better will turn up. I already like the way it looks right here. Now this is a mistake I'm starting to make, is I'm putting in these sort of purple dots and it's making the upper part of the canvas too heavy. And I'm doing something that sometimes I do where I just start stacking one shape on top of the next, which I'm starting to do here on the right side. It's not quite pulling too heavily to the right, but I'll keep going, as you'll see, and it will start to get really heavy, too many colors, too much going on. And I'm working on this next one that I've also sketched out. But then eventually I have to make a choice. Is working on both of them at the same time is too hard, so I'll take the one to the left away and just keep focusing on to the one on the right, because these are complex compositions. I'm trying to vary the sizes of the things I'm putting down. And I'm also trying to get the left side to connect to the left side is what I'm doing with those little dots there. It really is fun to work with an elaborate palette like this, but I would definitely say work up to it. There's a lot to be said about working with a minimum small palette and to push yourself that way, but there's also just, there's all this childlike freedom working with a palette that's just so full and all kinds of things to play with, and especially if you know that the colors are going to work well together. So I'm trying to get these leaf-like shapes, and you can see I'm really far now from that original bouquet. I use that almost as a way to warm up, of just the freedom of looking at the shapes, looking at the rhythms, looking at sort of the direction of the way that bouquet is shaped as a jumping off place to warm up. And then I'm moving into something different. Now I start to struggle with that bit up there. I've got too many textures, too many things. And actually what I should have done with what I was trying to do, it was the memory of those, of that bouquet. I'm not looking at it anymore, but I just remember those pointy yellow flowers. I'm trying to make that happen, and it would have been a lot better to use a pencil and just let this piece dry and then come in with a pencil to get those shapes. But you know how it is. We can get stubborn and we want it to happen now. And that's what I'm doing, and I kind of messed that up. And I wind up editing that whole thing out. I used an R&F crayon stick for that dark brown line there. And my crayon's kind of melted in the heat, so it hasn't made a great line for me, but I wind up keeping a lot of it. I'm trying to edit it out there just to have that line be not quite as thick and not the same line everywhere. So maybe parts of the line are thin, parts of the line are thick, so that there is differences in interest in the lines. Now I'm using my Radiant Blue for the upper part of this, the canvas to the left. That blue looks so great on that green. That is a beautiful combination. That's something I don't do often, but I would really recommend when you get to a color combination that you like, have a sketchbook, put it down as, oh wow, these are some of my favorites. That's all for today. I'm tired. Yeah, I need to let this dry and then I'll keep working tomorrow. This is where I got to from those first layers, and I look at this and it's just way too much going on. There's this whole section here of, first of all, the composition, everything going up at this angle is something that sometimes if I'm not paying attention, I do this. I build and stack and build and stack all the, going in this one angle, and it's really heavy and it's super imbalanced with a little thing over here. So to balance this out, I'm going to pull something over this in this direction. I don't like these white dots. Another thing I want to correct is I see these 3 dots here and they're pulling my focus. 1, 2, 3, the same size. So that needs to get fixed. I don't like I don't like the texture of this. And speaking of texture, I love this acrylic fluorescent pink. And I thought it looked so great with my neutral gray background. But let me tell you, acrylic and cold wax, I know that it doesn't work, but I tried to insist and be a rebellious artist. I don't know why. And it just doesn't. It's disgusting. The texture is just gross. First of all, it bubbles up and then it peels off. So skip it, forget it. That's got to go. You know, this is kind of sloppy here. So I've got some work to do. Also, this shape is center and dark. So I'm going to, and something dark is going to pull forward. So I don't want this to be not only central, but pulling focus like this. So I'm going to lighten this. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. And you will see that whole process unfold. So this is the finished painting. I have corrected a lot of the things that were really bothering me. There was too many colors, so that got corrected by having more green, more blues and more greens. That whole stacking thing that was happening on the left side of the composition was corrected by having something that comes across the canvas to the right, that leaf-like shape, and comes up and out of the square of the canvas itself. I liked having a little bit of yellow, something that pops, so I have that just one spot where that exists so that there's a nice, pull of focus and a nice balance between that yellow spot to the left and its complement, its purple to the right. I hope you enjoyed this video.